What's up, y'all? We are live. Dog Talk Tuesdays. Make sure to let me know that you can hear me. Throw something in the chat real quick. Let me know everything's good. Let me get over here and share this out a little bit before we get into the topic of today. First off, while I'm doing that, okay, so it's letting me know I'm live. All right, so first off, we need to, as far as the group, Giant XL American Bully Breed group on Facebook, we are going to be cracking down on the breed type of the dog. We did make a post, what was it, yesterday? Might have been earlier today, but there was a post made that we are going to be cracking down on the breed type of the dog uh, that are approved for the group. Hold on, let me make sure I didn't lock my son out the house. Oh, he's good. Okay, we're good. So basically, we were very lenient on the dogs that we were approving. We knew they were bullies, so we would let it slide. So now what we are doing is, hold on, why is it not letting me share? Okay, there it goes. So now what we're doing is we're going to be cracking down. We understand there are going to be dogs that are what you would say more terrier, more mastiff, more bulldog. There's going to be a variation. You have your newer school dogs of today, newer school dogs of 10 years ago, and then you got your old school dogs. So we're still approving that, but the thing is we're trying to avoid the dogs that are more narrow, dogs that have extremely bad structure, things like that. So we are going to be cracking down on that in the group. So just make sure to understand that. And again, we always will try to, if we deny a post, we will always try to send you the reason for why that post was denied. And now, if for some reason Facebook throws your post into the spam column, we haven't figured out exactly what that is. What I think it is you hit 10 different groups with the same post, so Facebook puts it in the spam column. So when we go through the spam column, it doesn't allow us, if we deny it, it doesn't allow us to send you a reason why. So if you get a denial and there's no reason as to why, you can always message us, let us know, and one of us will let you know exactly what's going on. Other than that, again, it's Dog Talk Tuesdays. We're going to get into today's topic, and we're going to discuss the starts, the beginning of breeding, and what you need to be thinking about, especially as a new breeder, and even as an old breeder, because all it is the same thought process over and over again. And we will also be discussing creating a bloodline in the pit bull community, but especially in the American bully community. There are a lot of people claiming bloodlines. I'm not going to say any names, but a lot of them happen to be popular studs or popular kennels. The kennel is called Big Dog Kennels. Next thing you know, they've done one breeding and they're claiming Big Dog bloodline. They've studded a male. His name is, I don't know, Astro, and he's done 3 breedings. The next thing you know, they're talking about Astro bloodline. That's not how a bloodline works. So we're going to discuss not only the purpose of a bloodline tonight, but we're also going to discuss how you go about creating your own bloodline. But before we even get into that, we'll start with breeding, and somewhat before we get into that, we're going to start with how we got to where we are. But the purpose of the conversation is to figure out how do you, especially in American bullies, band dogs go through a lot of similar problems where you've got a lot of people who are paper hanging, claiming they bred to this dog or use this dog or this breed was used or that breed was used. How do you erase that problem? Not only on the internet, which is what we're going to do today, but how do you erase those lies, those myths not just from the internet and online, but from your yard? How do you erase those lies from your breeding program, regardless of what those, the marketing schemes, the paper hanging, regardless of what it may have been? Uh, some have a hard time getting rid of traits from breeds that they weren't told about. Even if you're breeding us, let's say you're breeding for the American Bulldog breeders out there. Sometimes you have a hard time. Somebody might have mixed the Johnson in. You thinking you're breeding Scott. Somebody might have mixed Scott in. You think you're breeding Johnson. So how do you erase the problems of that have not been told to you? How do you get rid of? Because when it's all said and done, the problems, the lies and the myths don't matter. What matters are the traits that you're dealing with. Traits you want to keep, traits you want to get rid of. So how do we erase that from the yard? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But how we got here was basically these issues of not being honest about what's going on have always taken place in the dog community, amongst breeders, from breeder to breeder and breeder to client. They've always been there. But we had an extreme increase in it during the late 80s and early 90s, when people started wanting to breed working breeds, but didn't necessarily want to work them. They weren't testing the dogs, they weren't proving the dogs. When I mean testing the dog, I mean taking it out to do simulating situations that will encourage the dog to utilize those instincts or those traits that come with that breed, and improving them, putting them out there to do whatever it is that they're doing, and looking at successes and failures. You want to always keep track of that when it comes to, especially a working dog. But prior to the 80s and 90s, when it all blew up, in the 70s and 80s, they started with, a lot of the German Shepherd got popular. The Doberman got popular. Everybody wanted a German Shepherd or a Doberman. Well, these were working dogs at the time, especially in security. But people didn't necessarily want that. They just wanted the dog they saw. They liked the color, they liked the look. Next thing you know, those same people, now they're breeding them, but they're not proving these dogs. They're not testing these dogs. And then when you get to the 80s and 90s, the pit bull gets popular, the Rottweiler gets popular, and you're going through the same thing. American Bulldogs got popular during that period. Beagles, Jack Russells, Dalmatians, Bull Mastiffs, Rhodesians, all these different breeds got popular during that time. All these breeds had a purpose, but they garnered a fanfare that was not necessarily into the purpose. And what that did is it caused those breeds to become watered down and somewhat of a shell of themselves. So in order to make sales, these people weren't testing their dogs. They had to sound legitimate, and they had to convince a unknowing public that their dogs were worth coming to, that they had the real thing, that they were the real thing as a breeder. So what they had to do was make pedigrees and prove to the public that pedigrees were more important than ability, and that bloodlines were more important than testing a dog. So dogs' names got marketed. This popular dog, you put them in the magazine. Back then, we had this magazine used to be popular back in the day. USA Dogs or Dogs USA. I'm not sure what order that came in, but this magazine was real popular back in the day. So half the magazine is just, whatever the topics are, but then you get to the next half and it's all advertisement for breeds. All advertisement for breeds. You can see matter of fact, at this time, there's a lot of American bullies in here that are being advertised as pit bulls. So you got a lot of those old school kennels from back then that were advertised. So you're trying to get your kennel name popular. And at that time, you're trying to get your studs popular at that time. And that was part of the marketing of it. And in that process, in order to claim you have a bloodline, to sound more important, what you had to do at that point was start watering down what a bloodline was. You know what I'm saying? You had to start take terms that you had to achieve prior and take those terms and make them a little bit easier to achieve by lying about what those terms eventually are. So you fast forward from then to now, here we are, 2025. Well, you got people who weren't even born back then, and they don't know the difference. So next thing you know, the lie becomes a false truth, because they don't know the difference, and it's spreading. Um, and at this point, you had a lot of people claiming dog man. I'm a dog man. I'm a dog woman. Blah 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 blah. When I was young, and we've talked about this before, I remember dogmen sitting around talking, and they really only claimed to be a dog man not to prove a point or not to express who they were, but to kind of make a point of something else. They might be saying, "Oh, sitting around, well, you as a fellow dog man, what's your opinion of da da da?" You didn't have a lot of people claiming to be a dog man. If you owned a poodle and it somehow got injured in your yard, you knew there was that dog man down the street. You could kind of run to him, see if he could take a look at it, make sure the dog was okay. He'd have antibiotics on hand. He could do stitches, things like that. Dog man was a title earned by your peers. A bloodline was a process that was achieved. And we have really watered down that process. And in watering down that process, we allow those lies and those myths to exist within our yard. So today we're going to talk about how to get those out of your yard in a second. The lies and the exaggerations of terms then really blew up with the onset of internet and social media. Now you've got all of a sudden more people who are now claiming things that they really haven't achieved, lying about processes that they really haven't endured or gone through. And so again, it exists to this day. It's more widespread. And all of this being done, unfortunately, attracts a lot of people. First, it was attracting people who weren't into working breeds, and then those people would start breeding those dogs. But they're only into them for the look, not for what the dog is itself. But now we've gotten to a point where the internet, where there's a lot of people online buying dogs, breeding dogs, and they don't even truly like dogs. They're not truly into dogs. We kind of spoke on that last week. So when you get this type of person, you're not around them enough to know. You buy a dog from them. How do you erase the lies and the myths? And that's what we're going to talk about. The first step in breeding is going to always be knowing your purpose. I know a lot of people speak on, it's just a companion breed or it's just a Chihuahua. It doesn't have, no matter what breed you get into, you should be able to look around at your household, your family, your friends, the places you go. Do you hike? Do you camp? Do you hunt? Do you fish? What is the purpose of that dog in your lifestyle? We have cameras around our house. We have an alarm system, but my favorite security is my dogs, the ones in the kennel who are very aware of what's taking place outside, and the ones who are in the home who are also extremely aware of what's taking place outside. What is your purpose? When you get a dog, you have this dog, you decide you want to breed. What is it that you want to do? What is your purpose for the breeding? When you figure that out and then you start breeding towards it, that's where you erase a lot of the lies and the myths and the paper hanging and anything that you may not know about. That's how you erase it, because you start aiming for that goal. And so again, what is the purpose? And the purpose is, when it comes to you as a breeder, what is it that you want? What is it that dog wants to do? What is it that you, in the end game, when you finally reach your goal, what is it your dogs enjoy doing? Do they enjoy hunting? Do they enjoy protecting the family? Are they enthusiastic about it? Are they overly energized for it? What is it that dog wants to do? And What do you want them to do, and then what do they want to do? It doesn't have to be complicated. Let's say you're breeding beagles, but you don't plan on hunting. Then but you do want it to be alert. You want it to be somewhat of a protector of the home. Not that it's going to physically engage with an intruder, but it's at least going to alarm you. It's a watchdog. If that's what you want from your beagle, then that's what you need to start doing. Now, I would suggest not getting into beagles if that's your purpose. But when you figure out your purpose, it helps you figure out what breed to get. When you've got that breed, you then figure out, how can I take this to the next level? What is it now that I've got this breed? What is the purpose? What is it that I want this dog to want to be able to do that this dog that I just bought may not be as good at? And then you start breeding towards that purpose. The second step is how. How are the dogs in your yard, the dogs that you breeding, how before you get started, you figured out a purpose, how you want it to, where you want to be socially, where you want to be as far as protection, where you want to be as far as the show ring, whatever. How is that dog gonna get there? What is the process that dog's gonna do to get there? And that is gonna come with the dog's temperament. So now you need to break down the temperament. What do I want? What are the different drives and the thresholds that I want engaged in this dog? If I want a dog for the show ring, I know he can't be dog aggressive. I do want him somewhat dominant, so I want my dog aggression low, and then I want my dominance drive, probably around medium. So he's not going to come in contact with these dogs. So as long as they don't jump on him, he's fine if he's a dominant dog. I just don't want him aggressive if I plan for the show ring. If I want my dog to go to the dog park, I'm going to bring down that dominance drive in it a little bit more. The only reason you would want it somewhat in the show ring is so that the dog is confident and the judge and the audience can see that confidence. So you want to be thinking about those things when it comes to temperament. Ability. Let's say we're dealing with the show ring. You get to the show ring, you may not go on for 5 hours. I want that dog to have ability. I want that dog to have the muscle and what it takes and the discipline, the mindset, the intelligence to say, okay, we might be here for another 4 hours before we do our thing. Whatever that purpose is, you want it to have the temperament for it, you want it to have the ability for it, and then last but not least, you want it to have the look for it, the form for it, the structure. If you purchased a dog, let's say you bought an American Bully and you want it for hiking, but you've been all flabbergasted and amazed by the 200-pound dogs. Well, guess what? There's a good chance you're not going to be able to take it hiking. So look at the structure, the form, the conformation of the dog, and how it's going to fulfill the purpose. Now, let's say I'm determined I want a 200-pound dog that can go hiking with me. Then at that point, guess what? I'm going to need a little more leg length than what the average American Bully has. These are going to be the things that you got to think about. The third thing, Blue is in there going, wow. Let me close my door real quick. All right. So the third thing that we're looking at when it comes to this is, like I said, the form that is required to successfully complete whatever that purpose is. You don't want to get a Chihuahua but you want dogs that you know can jump 6-foot walls. He might have, if you breed him correctly, he'll have the desire to. He'll have the temperament for it. He'll keep trying, but he's a Chihuahua. His body's never going to allow him to do that. And eventually that can be discouraging. And start affecting his mental. Next thing you know, it's affecting his temperament. You bred him perfect genetically, but his environment of you wanting this Chihuahua to jump a 6-foot wall starts to break down starts to overpower the genetics and the desire that he had genetically. So you want to think about that. Once you've answered these questions and you've figured it out, now it's time to find the dog that fits it. Most times we started off with a male. I would say though, the best thing, especially if you're a new breeder getting started, best thing, find a female that fits the purpose and what you're looking for, the temperament, the ability, the look, everything that you're looking for. If you find that female, you're off to a great start right off the bat. You find that male, that's great, but now you got to find the female. Find the female first, and she's what you expect, the size you expect, the look you expect. She's got the perfect temperament. She's got a higher chance of passing that on to her litter than the actual male does. So this increases your odds. You want to examine the parents of the puppy that you're getting, or examine the dog that you're getting before you get it. You can do it by, let's say you're getting a dog. Cardi Bull came from Romania. So it was a lot of questions, a lot of videos, making sure I was seeing the things that I want. There's nothing wrong with not. You'll see online, oh, you shouldn't be getting a dog unless you're going to see it. That's what video is for. Is that as good as being there with the dog? Of course not. But it's the next best thing. So don't fear that. The distance between you and whatever breed or dog you started to kind of narrow things down to. But you also want to ask questions, and or those things that you can't see on your own, you want to ask questions about. What does the breeder do with the dog? Does it ever leave the yard? Does he take it to shows? Does she take it to agility competitions? What is the breeder doing with the dog? How are they socializing? Are they taking it out to crowds, events, the park? What does the breeder do with the dog, and how does the dog respond in these situations? These are questions you want to either observe the answer to, or you want to ask and receive the answer to. If you have a feeling that the breeder is lying, ask about another dog, but ask the same question. That breeder should be able to tell you slight differences. I can tell you the difference between Aziz and his mom, and Aziz and his dad. I can tell you the difference between Aziz and his brothers. So if you have a feeling that the breeder is not necessarily being honest, ask about another dog, and you should get a different answer or similar answer, but it shouldn't be the exact same. You want to observe the play energy. I've told this story a few times. When it came to Cardi Bull, I actually picked another pup. And one day he sent a video where Paul was outside kicking the ball around playing soccer. And I noticed this one pup just never tired out going after the ball. She was nonstop. She was more intense going after the ball. And so I had to call him up, and I'm like, hey, there's that one pup that's nonstop going after the ball. I want to change my pick. Has anybody picked that pup? Nah, nobody's picked that pup yet. Okay, that's the one I want. You sure? I thought you liked it. Yeah, I did, but I was caught up in the look. I see what I want in her now. And that's what made me switch that pick. So observe what you're looking for when you do get videos, and really look at the energy. And then the next thing, especially, you want to analyze every dog you see, toes up, tail forward, okay? And in that order. So even if it means that, okay, I need you to stand the dog to the side so I can look at it and take a picture and send that to me, or take a video and send that to me. Video is always best. But again, toes up, tail forward. So front toes, examine them all the way up. Are they splayed? How do they look? Is the breeder taking care of the nails? How is the pastern? Are the pasterns weak? Are they strong? You want to go all the way up that leg, all the way to the shoulders. And then as soon as you get to the shoulders and you see what you like, their muscle definition in the shoulder, go to the back foot, toes up. Analyze the same thing, the hips. How do the hips look? And then you want to go from the tail forward. Once you go toes up, next thing is tail forward. You want to analyze that dog. Is there a sway in the back? How's the rear look, etc. Once you have done that, you can start, picking your dog. So the next step, and this is the biggest step. A lot of times people will buy a pup, 6 months old, and then all of a sudden they buy the dog they want to breed to it. And now that pup that's 6 months old, let's say it has a high rear, but it doesn't show. Bless you. but it doesn't show until until he's a year old. All of a sudden, that's when it really starts showing. But you bought another dog at 6 months old, and a high rear wasn't in your mind. So now maybe that dog has a high rear, or it doesn't have the genetics to help you get rid of that high rear. You want to look at that. King, and when I say that, King was a dog that was very good at getting rid of high rears. He had a very level rear. And when we would breed him to females, people who paid for his stud fee, we would breed them to their dogs that had high rears, and pretty much the whole litter, for whatever reasons, the high rear would be gone. But it was always the majority of the litter, and almost always the females level rears, just like he did. So you want to be able to look at that, spend time with the dog. That first year and a half, 2 years needs to be focused on nutrition, playing, training, socializing. Once you've gotten that down, you understand the temperament. Now you know the structure of the dog. Needs a little more mass, needs the same mass, needs a little more bone, needs the same bone. You're satisfied with it. Whatever that is, once you've done that, then it's time to pick a partner based off what you learn from your dog. So let's say you started off with a female. Like I said, she's got a slight high rear. Now, when I go to pick her partner, I'm going to need to find dogs that have level rears or even slightly low. I'm going to talk to that breeder. Do high rears run in their yard? No, if they're nowhere in the yard, chances are that dog's going to help you get rid of whatever that issue is. Then once you pick that partner, you're going to start your breeding. And you've already formulated your vision and the purpose for your yard. So now you're going to start breeding towards that and getting that from that litter. What you want, the traits that you want to keep are going to be the traits that take you closer to your purpose. And you should have an idea when you do that first breeding, you should know this is what I'm going to get out of this breed. Now, if he has a slightly high rear, let's switch to head. I need a bigger head. So if he has a large head, she has a small head. I did the breeding. So there's going to be some pups in there that don't have the head that you want. Okay. You got to be honest with yourself. You also have to be honest with the people who might get pups from you. And from there, you've got to make sure that you are now picking the right pups. If you're just getting started with this, 8 weeks is a good idea of how your dog is going to look, how your dog is going to be built in the future. But let's see here. Okay, so that's one of the main things that you want to look at, because and there's going to be times where you picked the wrong pup, sold the best pup, didn't realize it till that pup hit 6 months old. It just is what it is. That's what comes with breeding. And you're going to be every time you keep a pup, you're going to be looking for who that pup's going to breed to, and you're going to be starting that process over and over and over again. There's nothing wrong with that. Eventually, your goal should be to create a bloodline. Now, it doesn't have to be. There are people that breed for years and never create a bloodline. But you do want your goal to be to eventually get to that bloodline. Once you get to the bloodline, and remember, bloodlines create consistency consistently. I'm going to say that again. Bloodlines create consistency consistently. That's their whole purpose. There's something that you can count on when it comes to the traits that you want to receive. Hold on, somebody said it's not being seen on Facebook. Hold on real quick. Let me get over here, and then we can go ahead and share it. Where are we at? And there we are. All right, give me a quick second. I'm going to share this on Facebook real quick. And here we go. But that's the main thing that was a crazy picture. That's the main thing when it comes to bloodlines. Again, it's about consistency when it comes to the traits of temperament. It's about consistency when it comes to the traits of when it comes to the traits of temperament, uh, ability, and also of the look of the dog, the structure of the dog, the conformation of the dog. So that is what a bloodline is all about. So for those who aren't looking for a bloodline, there's nothing wrong with that. You're just going to keep creating and buying dogs. But if you want to reach a point where you're no longer buying dogs, you're going to eventually begin creating a bloodline. So what is a bloodline? A bloodline is your yard, and it's the uniqueness of your yard within your breed. You want to have three things: a unique temperament that stands out in your breed, a unique ability that stands out in your breed, and a unique look that stands out in your breed. And these things should be recognizable to outsiders of your breed, to your peers, other breeders. They should be able to, ooh, that dog acts like a so-and-so dog. That dog does things like a so-and-so dog. Ability, one of the things with ability is intelligence, cognition. You want to, somebody sees it, oh, he's smart like so-and-so's dogs. That's what happens when you get a bloodline. Oh, that looks like so-and-so's dogs. His whole yard, that's how it looks. So that's the bloodline is about creating a unique temperament, a unique ability, and a unique look that is recognizable to your yard amongst the breed. You know, so if you're breeding German Shepherds, we sometimes think they all look the same, but if you created a bloodline, they're not going to look like, they'll have the breed type, they'll meet the standard if you're aiming at the show ring, but they're not all, but they're still going to stand out amongst other dogs of the same breed, whether they're larger, thicker bone, brighter, more bright color, whatever it may be. It's all going to come down to temperament, ability, and look that makes that bloodline stand out. Now let's get into the process of creating a bloodline, and here is where a lot of the this is where a lot of the lies get told, especially in the American bully community. A bloodline is not just about a popular stud that you're breeding. It's not just about a popular kennel. A bloodline is an actual, creating a bloodline is an actual process that has always been known, but as of recently has been changed and watered down to make claiming the title of a bloodline easier to achieve. One, understand you're going to need more dogs. You're not going to be able to just have those two dogs you started off with, that one male, that one female that you started off with. That was weird. So understand that when it comes to a bloodline. The next thing is you want, and each of these dogs that you're obtaining needs to be the dogs that will take you further to your goal. The next second part of creating a bloodline is the bloodline doesn't start until all the dogs are related. Okay, half brother in this kennel, half sister in that kennel, uncle in this kennel, sister in this kennel, brother in that kennel, uncle over here, aunt over here, a cousin over here, grandparents, parents, etc. Once you have a family of dogs, that's when you can begin the first steps of creating a bloodline, because they're all related. So from here, once they were all related, it's going to take you 5 to 10 or more generations for the bloodline to be complete, for it to reach a point that you have unique traits as far as temperament, unique traits as far as ability, unique traits as far as the look that distinguish your dogs from all other dogs in the breed. The best breeders, they'll get it done in about 5 generations. They'll have the family of dog, and then 5 generations from there, they'll achieve what they're looking for. The average breeder is going to take 7 to 10, and then you got hiccups that take place that could take, 10 or more. But again, the bloodline does not start until all the dogs being used are also related, and that's when you begin your line breeding. Every time you bring in an unrelated dog, let's say you get a breeding, but you know there's a trait that you need to get rid of out of your yard. A lot of the related dogs seem to have it in your yard. You see a dog online or you meet somebody, they've got a dog that can erase it. Every time you bring in an unrelated dog, you're starting over. Now, you're not starting your bloodline process over. Just understand that you've now brought in traits that as you were creating these, getting to where you wanted to get to, you had erased some traits. You had gotten out the negative traits. You made the positive traits that you wanted stay around. And then you bring in this outside dog, you might be taking a step backwards. So the best way to look at it mentally is that I'm starting over, because now that litter is not going to be as consistent as to what it would have been had you have bred your dog to a related dog. But that outside dog might get you to where you need to get to a little faster. But in the sense of tightening the blood, you are starting over, and that's what needs to be understood. As far as you creating a bloodline, no, you're not starting over. But in the process of tightening the blood, you are starting over. This purpose of line breeding, the process of it is to slowly tighten the blood while you're getting the traits you want and getting rid of the traits that you don't want. Again, those traits fall in three categories: temperament, ability, and the look, the structure, the conformation of the dog. So the bloodline is all about maintaining traits, even making them better, and getting rid of traits. That's what the line breeding that you're going to start doing is focused on. Line breeding, the difference between line breeding is inbreeding, okay? Because you're breeding related dogs. The reason we have come up with the term line breeding is these are dogs that are not directly related. They're not siblings, they're not mother, they're not father, okay? Breeding mother to father, breeding mother to son, that's an inbreeding. Breeding grandmother to grandson, that's a line breeding. Breeding to uncles, half siblings, those are line breeding. But to take brother to sister, that's an inbreeding. And to take sister to father, that's an inbreeding. To take brother to mother, that is what an inbreeding is. So you don't want to do that yet. You want to start off line breeding, because inbreeding locks in traits. Line breeding helps you maintain better or get rid of traits. And so that's what your line breeding is for. And at the same time as you're doing it, you're slowly making the blood tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's the whole purpose of the line breeding. So therefore, you want to keep a close eye on your dogs the minute you start the line breeding, because you want to pay attention to their traits. Going back into previous generations can cause what they call genetic fading due to a lack of genetic diversity. So it's always going to be a balance of tightening the blood, but at the same time maintaining genetic variation and diversity in your yard and in the breeding itself that you're doing. So you're going to want to keep track. You're going to want to keep a close eye on the offspring from those line breedings. And the reason is you want to get to your objective as fast as possible so that you're not overbreeding back into the same blood in your yard. But at the same time, it's a balance that you have to maintain, because you do want that blood to tighten. But if you keep going back into the yard, and this is what tends to make people take more and more generations, the traits start to dull. They start to not really stand out. The structure might be fine, but all of a sudden you're starting to lose height. The brightness, the color of the dog's fur starts to kind of dull. Cognition, they're not learning as fast. So these are the things that you want to keep an eye on, and this is why you constantly have to test your dogs and test your litters and keep an eye on the traits when it comes to temperament, ability, and the look. You want to keep an eye on that. You can also reach a point you're constantly tapping back into the blood rather than moving forward, because you're constantly correcting traits. You can also all of a sudden get the traits you want, but because you tap back into that blood so much, you've lost that genetic variation and diversity. All of a sudden, the dog doesn't pass the traits for some reason. because you keep gently tapping back into it. They become more susceptible to diseases. They become more susceptible to their environment, weather changes, things like that, just because there's a lack of variation of genetics to adapt to what's going on around it. You start to have smaller litters. You start to have more deaths within the litters, more stillborn pups. So these are things you're going to want to be paying attention to as you're doing your line breeding. And you're going to need to pay attention to, okay, when I bred niece to uncle, I didn't have any issues. But when I bred granddaughter to grandfather, I noticed this. That means I'm going to need to get back out of it. I'm going to need to go back to an uncle. I'm going to need to distance it out or bring totally fresh new blood into the breedings. All of a sudden you're about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 generations into your line breedings, and you finally got what you want. The temperament is great. You love the drives of the dog. You like the threshold that each of the dogs are at. The ability of the dog is there. The cognition of the dog. It can jump a fence that you want it to be able to jump. It can pull a weight that you want it to be able to pull. It's alert. It's to its surroundings. Gets along with other dogs, but won't be dominated by those dogs. When you start seeing that, the look is there. The structure is right where you want it. Everything is how you want it. It's perfect. At that point, that's when you do either your inbreeding to lock it in, or you do a close line breeding. A close line breeding would be the best tends to be granddaughter to grandfather. That's when you are, now is that going to lock it in as much as an inbreeding breeding? And the best inbreeding tends to be daughter to father. I always say to avoid going son to mother, because he's already got a lot of her traits and fewer of his dad's traits, most likely, because the father goes 50-50 with the mom on genetics on the female offspring. But when it comes to the male offspring, a lot of that father's genetics goes into making him a male. And you have to think about that. That means the mom is focused on giving you her temperament, her ability, and her look. The dad is focused on temperament, ability, look, giving you male genitals, giving you thicker male bone, giving you a bigger male head. What he's got to accomplish is more spread when it comes to his male offspring. When it comes to the female offspring, she doesn't need all that. Basically, when it's all said and done, we as men, we as males, a lot of us don't want to admit it, we are a deformity. Nature naturally creates females. Then every now and then there's a deformity that takes place and it creates a male. So when it comes to the males, their genetics, it's a battle with the mom, 50-50 when it comes to the female. So you can even break it down. Let's say you have 10 pups. You have 5 males, 5 females, 5 males, okay? Let's do 12 to keep it an even number. So you have 6 females, you have 6 males. When it comes to females, 3 of those 6 females are going to take after mom. 3 of those 6 females are going to take after dad. When it comes to the male offspring, he's given a Y chromosome. It's not as big. It doesn't have as much genetic information as the X chromosome does. Females are XX, males are XY. That Y comes from dad. It doesn't hold as much genetic information, and it's also dedicated to making him a male, more and not as much dedicated to passing on the genetics of the father. So when you do that, so you got 6 females, mom and pop battle it out. 3 females take after mom, 3 females take after dad. Then you got 6 males. Well, more than likely, at least 4 of those males are going to take after mom. Okay? So the mom is going to dominate the litter always. That's just, now every now and then, especially if the mom and dad are scatterbred. What are you hearing? Aziz, what you looking at? So So think about it that way when you do your breedings and which pups you want. Do you want the male or do you want the female? Because you want to remember, you want to increase your chances of passing on the genetics that you're looking for. Let me check something real quick. Hold on. What you looking at? Is Blue out? Oh, what's he looking at? Move, boy. All right, so where are we at? Okay, so that's something to think about when it comes to doing your breedings. So then finally, it's time. You've gotten where you want. It's time to do that inbreeding. You go ahead, you do the inbreeding. You've established your bloodline. So now you're doing the inbreeding. The only purpose of the inbreeding is to lock it in and increase your traits, the chances of your traits being consistent. Here's the thing about inbreeding. The purpose in inbreeding is not to fix things. Okay, it's strictly about locking it in. You had a mom that was perfect. You had a dad that was perfect. You did this inbreeding. You're not trying to fix anything when you do an inbreeding. All that, if you needed something to fix, then you should have stuck with the line breeding or brought in an outside dog. But now you do the inbreeding to lock in those traits. And again, so the main thing is, remember, inbreeding is not about making it better. It's about locking it in. Once you've done that inbreeding, next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need an outcross. You don't want to do another inbreeding. You can do a distant line breeding. I would avoid grandfather. I would start going to like uncles and aunts. Okay, that's what I would look for. But you want to do a distant, even cousins. You want to do a distant line breeding or do a total outcross. Okay, I would suggest do the outcross so that you get more variation in the genetics. You get fresh blood in there, especially if that outcross is a scatterbred dog, because then that dog just becomes a vessel of fresh blood. Because you've done all this line breeding, you did that inbreeding, they're going to override everything about that dog that you bring in. But you still want to make sure that that dog is the equivalent in temperament, ability, and look as your dogs. It needs to be just as impressive as your dogs that you created from these line breedings and then this final inbreeding. At that point, what people are looking for, you'll hear the term hybrid vigor a lot, or what they call, the scientific name for hybrid vigor is heterosis. And what bringing that fresh blood in, so let's say I've created this line of dogs. They're extremely smart. They've got the heads that I want, the size that I want. Everything about them is perfect, which is why I did my inbreeding. When I bring this fresh blood in, of a dog who has equal temperament, equal head, equal everything that I want, a lot of times that gives you a better health, better intelligence, better functioning, better ability than what you previously had in your yard. It just takes that litter to the next level. And then that's why you want to begin the process of your line breeding again, because now you've established your bloodline. You use this empty vessel that's just as good as everything you've had, but it brings in fresh blood and it just increases the vitality of the dogs in your yard. And we'll get into process kind of goes with working dogs. I'll get into that. But so again, the purpose of your bloodline is for other people, is so that other people can come to you and say, I know if I breed to his dogs, I'm going to get what I'm looking for. So I got a female, you just created your bloodline, you've done the inbreeding, you did the outcross, and now all of a sudden I want to get a dog from you. And I'm going to breed it to my female, or I want to use one of your studs from your bloodline and breed it to my female. She might be distantly related. She might be totally unrelated. I know because of your process that I can get the traits from you that I'm expecting to get. I don't have to worry if my litter is going to be consistent. I'm not just going to get that one or two pups that meet the goals and the purposes that I'm looking for. chances are you're going to have a litter full of them. All I got to do is just grab one. And that's the purpose, is for those people to be able to come to you and get what it is that you have and know that it's consistent. Because it's going to be, and it's going to be a unique consistency that's in your yard within your breed. And so when clients come to you, they can count on that unique temperament. They can count on that unique ability. They can count on that unique look. Earlier, we talked about erasing the lies in your yard. So you got people who were paper hanging. You got people who were claiming things that weren't true. And now all of a sudden you've got dogs from them. By you creating your own bloodline, you've erased those traits. And not only have you erased those traits, you concentrated that blood, which keeps those traits and those lies out. You also maintain certain traits. And not only have you maintained or bettered them, you also concentrated that blood to keep it going from generation to generation. And that's what I meant about creating a bloodline creates consistency consistently, and it also erases the lies of the past. I'll give you a perfect example. In American Bullies, Kimbo is a dog some people love, some people can't stand because he's had offspring that have attacked children, things like that. Actually, some of them have killed people, especially in England. But he's in a lot of our blood. People just bred away from it. Because they're just scatter breeding, pop up every now and then. When you get into a bloodline, those bad traits, you're getting rid of those traits by concentrating the blood in the direction that you want to go. And going back to the true process of creating a bloodline erases all those lies, the marketing schemes of the past that are in your pedigree, but you don't even know they're there. And the way it did it is because you started off with a purpose. You started off with a goal for temperament. You started off with a goal for each of the drives that make up temperament. You started off with a goal for the thresholds that are within each of those drives. You started off with an ability, a purpose and ability. I want this dog to be smart. I want these dogs to be. You started off with a goal and a purpose for your breedings. And that's how you were able to erase the lies and everything that are told that throughout your pedigree that you don't know about. Even paper hanging. We know in the American Bully, everything was called a pit bull, but some of them were American Bulldogs. Some of them were band dog mixes of other dogs. Some of them were Cane Corso. Some of them were Presa Canario. Some of them were Boer Bells. Some of them were Bull Mastiffs. But they were all labeled as pit bulls. And all they would do is I bred to this Bull Mastiff, but I got this pit bull over here. So I take his picture, put that in the pedigree and claim that it's him. And I use the papers to claim that it's him. But really, I bred to this Rottweiler over here. Well, as I started creating my bloodline, I started erasing the traits that I would not want from a Rottweiler or a Bull Mastiff or American Bulldog or whatever. And this dog started forming not just into a bully, but turning into a bully within my yard. All of it has been replaced. And now your purpose has been, and the lies that we don't know about, they no longer matter because your purpose has rejuvenated what's going on within your yard. The next thing we need to do is we need to start teaching and speaking on the true process of creating a bloodline. A popular stud does not create a bloodline. You need to start. A popular kennel does not make a bloodline. You need to create a family of related dogs and start line breeding those dogs for 5 or more generations. And the average person is going to take you more. When you reach the point that you have a unique look, unique temperament, and a unique ability within your yard that separates your yard from other breeders of the same breed, that's when you have a bloodline. And so you achieve that through the line breeding or from generation to generation to generation. And then you finally got what you felt was perfect and you locked it in. That doesn't mean that you're not going to go better from there. You always want to look for flaws. You always want to look for improvements in every breeding process. When you get people claiming they have a bloodline, you should be able to see it in their pedigree. You should be able to see related dogs being bred for at least 5. And the reason 5, the best breeders can do it in 5, and because we've seen them achieve it, then breed to outside dogs and the traits still passed on to the offspring, we know it takes at least 5 generations of blood of the same related blood to not only create it but lock it in. 3, work. 2, not gonna work. 4, 5, okay, now we know it's done. The reason it takes some people longer of breeding those dogs together is because they're still fixing flaws. They haven't reached the point that they did the inbreeding. But if you go 5 generations of line breeding and everything's all of a sudden perfect, you lock it in through the inbreeding or close line breeding. Now we know that these are genetics that aren't going to be washed off by dealing with a scatterbred dog or a dog that's only been line bred a couple times. The only thing that can wash that out is another bloodline. And it's going to be a battle between the two as far as what traits that you're going to get. So when you get breeders and they're talking about their bloodline, or I got it from this guy, he's got a bloodline, or I went to this kennel, they've got a bloodline, then that means you should be able to look at the pedigree of that dog and you should be able to see related dogs in that pedigree being bred. If you don't see that, then it's not a bloodline. Okay, we have to remember that. So when you get people claiming a bloodline, always question them on it, because a lot of times in the bully community, 90% of the time that somebody's talking about a bloodline, they're talking about a popular kennels called Two Big Kennels, and they're saying I got 2 big bloodline. So that's not a bloodline, or it's just a popular dog named Aziz, and they're talking about get some of that Aziz blood. I've got some Aziz blood. Aziz is the great grandfather. That's not Aziz blood. That's not a bloodline. It's just a popular stud that happens to be in your pedigree. So again, the process of creating a bloodline will show in their peds because you're going to see nothing but related dogs for at least 5 generations being bred. If the bloodline, you decide, you know what, it makes me more money if I claim bloodline, you start breeding dogs that aren't related, or you start claiming a bloodline. The problem is you're going to have somebody that watches this video and they're going to finally understand what a bloodline is, or you're going to have somebody that knows from what a bloodline truly is in the process of creating it. And then when they breed to your dogs that you're creating a bloodline, you're not going to see none of your traits in it. And that's when you know it's a problem. Last but not least, you're gonna get things wrong. It's just this is life we're dealing with. So you're gonna get things wrong. You're gonna pick the wrong dog. So now you got to pick another dog to compensate for that. You're gonna pick some dogs. We have dogs here that will never be bred, whether it's because of their temperament. Some because their temperament's too dull, some because their temperament's a little too high in certain scenarios. They'll never be bred. Some don't fit the look that we're aiming for. We thought they did as a puppy, and then all of a sudden they got 6 months old and they start turning into something else. And so they'll never be bred. They'll always be loved. My wife, my kids, they'll tell you, the dogs that I don't breed, they're the ones I take in the woods with me. So companions, because a lot of times I'm out there throwing deer corn, so it's great to jump on that side by side right out there, and I've got 3-4 dogs following me through the woods. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to it and accept your failures. It's not a bad thing. There's times where things go wrong. Sometimes you keep the wrong pup. We've done it several times. We kept this pup thinking he'd be the best pup out the litter, but turns out that bought another pup, they sent us a picture in a year and a half, and it's like, oh damn, that's the pup. He's better than the pup we kept. You're gonna have those. When it comes to temperament is something that we're constantly learning when we're dealing with our dogs. We're constantly learning about the drives, what separates one drive from another, what the thresholds are that we want within that drive. You have to test it in order to find out what you're dealing with. Sometimes we aren't good at creating tests. Sometimes we forgot a test that we normally do with this litter. There's going to be mistakes. So creating simulations and testing things, that's what we're all looking for. You also have old traits that pop back up. For some reason, out of nowhere, an old trait pops back up. That shouldn't happen if you've done your line breeding process correctly and while you're on the goal of achieving a bloodline. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna look through the comments, but so just remember, bloodlines create consistency consistently. It gives your clients something that they know they can turn to. It gives your clients something that they can depend on. Bloodline does not mean popular stud, popular kennel. And so you always pay attention to that. Let's see. G-Line's in here. What's up, man? Let's see here. Say, brother, now that you've been in Arkansas, hold on, I'm looking for. Let's see here. All right, say, brother, now that you've been in Arkansas, what's up, Vaughn? For a minute, it would be great to see you on the NWA King Corso podcast with Joe Church. I've seen his podcast, and I like what he does. I didn't know he was in this state, though. So I definitely have no problem hitting him up. I would love to do an interview with him. I would actually love to interview him because he's got a lot of experience. He Rose Kennels, what's up? Thanks for joining in. Hybrid Vigor is great when you're using the dogs exclusively in your camp. There you go. But it doesn't necessarily pass its own looks and attributes when being used by other kennels. That is very true. So let's get back to that. That's actually a great point to bring up. So when it comes to hybrid vigor, remember, there are scientists that say it don't exist. I just say that they're wrong because you're trying to do it in a microscope, whereas us as dog breeders, we're watching it take place in our yards. But so heterosis, the scientific name for a hybrid vigor. So you've done your your line breedings, you did your inbreeding, you got what you want, you did your inbreeding to lock it in. Now it's time for you to find an outcross. You get lucky and you find somebody that's just as focused on everything as you are, but their dog is totally unrelated, and you breed to that dog. Now what happens is, because you've got so much genetic diversity, it increases the chances of hybrid vigor, or what scientists call heterosis. And here's the thing, though. He's 100% right. You can have it in your yard. You can have it and this is where, especially back in the day, people would get hybrid vigor on their yard, and it was their studs. They made sure that stud, because he just looked 10 times better than his father, his grandfather, uncles, and they take that dog out. And everybody thinks they're going to breed to him and get his genetics. If you've done your line breeding right, process of creating your bloodline right, they're going to get his genetics. But because he is of a blood, how do you explain it? So you got your bloodline here, 5 generations. Then all of a sudden you bring in this one scatterbred dog. He looks just as good as your bloodline. You breed him, that 5 generations is going to take over. So when you get the offspring, it creates hybrid vigor. But then when that offspring breeds, he passes on 5 generations of creating a bloodline. He doesn't pass on that one dog, nor does he pass on the hybrid vigor that he has in himself. Your chances of increasing that, if you have a female that shows heterosis or shows hybrid vigor, that's going to now increase your chance. But a lot of times, hybrid vigor that is seen in a stud does not pass on to the dogs he breeds to, especially if he doesn't go back into his own line. If he goes out to an outside yard, a lot of times it does not go to that yard. The female will increase the chances of it going into that yard. So that's 100% right. Any other comments on here? For some reason, it's not showing the Facebook comments. Let me see. I don't know why StreamYard does that. Yeah, I don't see it. Let me see if I can go over here, and if that'll pull them up. No, that's not pulling them up either. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and end the live now. One thing I did notice with the last live, I went to it. For some reason, you guys' comments were all of a sudden gone. And then the people who commented, who watched it after the live, those comments were showing up. So I don't remember it being that way when I used to go live. So I'm not too sure what that's about. But any comments, any questions that you have related to the topic, unrelated to the topic, definitely put them in the comments once the live is over with, and I will definitely get to those. Other than that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back again next Tuesday. Salute.